My name is Luke, and today I wanted to give you a quick 5 to 10 minute video on sort of the basics, how-to of Openclaw, and maybe this turns into a series. We'll see how it goes, and yeah, let's get right into it. So today I want to speak specifically talking about agents and sub-agents. That's what you'll be interacting with 95% of the time. So let's talk about that. Openclaw, everyone knows what Openclaw is. You can use it on Telegram, WhatsApp, Discord, iMessage, and about 30 other different platforms. It's anywhere you are. It is literally AI, how AI is supposed to be. Getting into it. So, Openclaw is worked on by a agent system, right? You have a main agent, so main agent, so we'll call it one, just this, we're not going to call it one. We're just going to call it main agent, right? Now, main agent is they are the boss, they look after everything, they sit at the very top. The only person higher than them in the hierarchy is you, right? Is you. So, but from an AI perspective, they control everything as long as they have your permission. Okay? Now, this is the agent that you name. Some people call it, I called it Jarvis, because I'm creative and I definitely didn't fall into that trend of creating. Anyway, I call it Jarvis. You might want to call it Bob or Trevor or literally whatever you want to call it, okay? But that is your main agent, okay? Now, you can set a default LLM model or a default AI model that it can use, or, it's up to you. I personally have it set to GPT 5.4. It is overridden from the model default, but I'm sure a lot of people are using Minimax, M2.5. I'm sure a lot of people are using Opus 4.6. Right? Everyone can use whatever you want. We don't play favoritisms. We don't care. If you have issues, use a better model. If you're using a free model and you are always running into issues with things not working, with whatever, use a better model. So that is the person you speak to every day. That is the person you ask to check your calendar. That is the person you ask to go and browse the web. That is the person you ask to do whatever you want. It's not a person, it's an agent, right? It's an AI. What happens after that and what you can do, right, is you can have additionally, I hate that it's just one, Excalibur. Just let me pick like an arrow 10 times. Anyway, we're just going to draw it. So, what you can do after you've asked it a question, that's your main agent, right? It's got its own personality. It learns. It remembers things. It does everything. Okay. What this main agent can then do is spawn up to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 sub-agents. Now, what's a sub-agent? A sub-agent is basically a little worker. So, think of it like this. Think of it as an office building, right? Think of it as a table, right? And around this table, you've got, different workers. I don't know if this analogy is gonna work, but it should. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, no. Let's do 4 and 4. Right? So think of it as a table, okay? This is the boss, right? This guy here is the boss. And you guys and then the boss has 8 employees, okay? Now these employees all sit and just have a piece of paper in front of them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They all have a piece of paper in front of them, right? Or a laptop, right? They all have a laptop in front of them. And they're just sitting there. They're just sitting there and they're waiting for something to do. What the boss does is the boss then gives them a pen, right? A pen. Or gives them a password to log into their computer, right? So if the boss says to Sub-Agent 1, I want you to go and research the stock market. Sub-Agent 2, I want you to research the latest trending articles or, posts on X for the stocks. Number 3, I want you to analyze the risk associated with buying and selling in the current market. Blah, blah, blah. He gives them all a pen and they all go off and they all do some research. They write things down and then they all give their piece of paper to the boss, right? And go, boss, this is what we found. This is how this is the information. The boss then gets that information, collates it, and then the boss, oh my God, it's horrible. The boss then sends it to you and says, Luke, John, Julie, whatever your name is, this is what we found, right? But the whole time, you can keep speaking to the boss. You can tell the boss, hey, by the way, I've got to go to this place in half an hour. How long is it going to take from my address? And he would have gone to another one and gone, hey, can you find this information out? So it gave its piece of paper to the boss while they were all working, and he ended up sending that to you in the meantime, right? So the boss is always free to handle, I don't know, mega boss, you, right? But what's really cool and what's really powerful about the sub-agents is, if you like, you can give each sub-agent its own sort of skills, personalities, tools, abilities in an essence, right? So, for example, this sub-agent, right? They all sub-agents go off the default model, right? Like I was saying before, the default model might be Minimax M2.5. But the main agent's been overridden. Just to give you perspective, my agent has an override of GPT 5.4. However, my default model is Minimax M2.5, if that makes sense, okay? So, if you like, these are all run off the default model, right? However, if you want to, and this is how I have it set up, I have some sub-agents, right, running off different models with different capabilities and different, they're basically a super agent, in a super sub-agent, in a way that these all run off the spawn of this little dude here. He runs off GPT 5.4, right? And he can spawn an additional sub-agent, right? He can spawn an additional sub-agent. So he's got superpowers, right? And for me, just say for my coding sub-agent, he might be super smart at coding, and he might have extra tools for coding, and he might have a different thinking level, and he might have different memory. He might have a different soul MD file, right? He might have a different personality. You can sort of have them be their own thing, right? But he's different to everybody else. He's more powerful. He's more fine-tuned. He's more, he's better at doing things, right? And he's his own little boss, but he still sits at the table. The boss still allocates him work, right? But if the boss wanted to, the boss can spawn 10 of him, right? So this whole table could be the coding agent, right? But then you can set up different ones. You might want this guy here to be really smart at research, right? So maybe you give it a different model. I don't know what's really good at researching. Let's just say, for argument's sake, let's just say Opus 4.6, right? Argument's sake. Opus 4.6, really good at researching, right? Understanding, collecting. Opus 4.6 now has 1 million context, right? So it can do a lot of things, right? It can go off and it can do research. It might have thinking high. It might have 1 million context. You might enable fast mode on it. So, you don't really need fast mode, right? So it goes off and it does things, and it can, if the boss wants, he can have 8 of these, right? So I hope you're all getting the idea. The way you can set up your sub agents is really good, but if you want straight out of the box, right, you can just have them all the one model. If you choose to, you'd have them, they don't have to have any sort of crazy abilities. They don't have to do anything. They can all just be a general sub-agent. But you might want to have a free sub-agent. You might want to have a sub-agent connected to OpenRouter Free or OpenRouter Auto. Or maybe you want a Grok sub-agent, or maybe you want a GPT 5.1 sub-agent, or 4.0 sub-agent, or you want a Sonnet 4.6 sub-agent. You can do that if you want. But, I mean, the beautiful thing about Openclaw is you can do whatever you want. If you want that, you can have that. You can build it however you want. We do not tell you how you can or cannot use the Lobster Man, right? The Lobster Man is free to be customized however you like. However, what we want to do is give people the capability to just use it straight out of the box. So it's not too hard, it's not too difficult, and you get the same amazing and great experience that someone sitting there tweaking it for hours gets. Just not going to be the same. But I think that kind of explains it in the most basic possible way. I personally have a coding agent. I have a coding agent. I have a articles agent, which also has articles research sub-agent. I'm going to say sub-agent. And I have a social agent. So that's how I have it set up. They all have their own little home. They all have their own little capabilities. They all have their own models. And they all do their own thing. Coding has its own chat. You don't need to have its own chat. You can do this in one chat and you will get different responses, and you can manage 8 conversations at once, and the AI won't lose control. But I have coding in its own chat just to not to bulk everything up. I have articles in its own chat, and social agent just kind of floats around whenever I need it. So that's kind of it, guys. It was supposed to be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It ended up being 15 minutes. But if you have any questions, if you need me to re-explain it somehow, please let me know. But I think this is a really good basic understanding of how agents work in Openclaw. And yeah, thanks for watching.